This is the Mind Body Detox Podcast, where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom on how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. I'm your host, Integrative Intuitive Medium, Kara Lovehart, and today we're going to dive into the topic of psychic spring cleaning. We could also refer to this as energetic spring cleaning, or for those of you out there who love decorating, we're actually going to also talk about using the elements to find balance in your home or your space. So this will apply to those out there who are really interested in the aesthetics of your space as well as the energetics of your space. So in this episode, I want to talk about some of the signs that your space needs an energy clearing. Some of these signs you may not be aware of, the things that you probably need to do a space clearing of some sort. We're going to talk about the factors that are involved in creating a space's personality. All spaces have personality, and that affects the energy and the experience we have in the space. So we're going to talk about that. I will discuss basic space clearing tools, as well as identifying which element of the 4 elements could be out of balance in your space. And finally, some simple practical tools for you to find balance in the elements within your space. I felt this was the perfect time to talk about this topic. We are in springtime, and this is commonly the time that we're changing over from the dead of winter into the activity that is the spring that, of course, transitions into summer. And as a medium, most of my journey has been working with energy in general. I feel as a psychic, I'm really an energy interpreter. So that doesn't just include spirits, but it includes the interpretation of energy signatures that are attached to our objects that we carry in our lives, our space, and even the energy around us that represents the identity and which we are expressing ourselves to be. So when it comes to spaces carry a personality. So we're going to talk about that today. And mostly as an intuitive, my journey has been trying to help people become more aware of these subtle energy signatures, these energy personalities, the essence of the things around us, within us, that do affect our lives. And when we dive deeper into this self-awareness of not only ourselves, but of the things around us, we can become more energy sensitive. But for those who are not aware, or if you aren't aware to the extent of which things around you and within you affect your life, I find it really interesting, the symptoms of potential energy stagnation or energy imbalance that we're going to talk about right now. So here are some signs that whether it's you, yourself, your personal space, or your home, your office, the space in which you reside in, potentially could use some energy balancing. Now again, when we talk about energy balancing, what I'm referring to here is finding a space of harmony within ourselves, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and a space of harmony within our physical location, our home, our office, whatever it is that we're at. So signs that our space could be imbalanced are heaviness. So in general, a space that feels heavy, stagnant, feeling stuck. If you've been feeling stuck in your life, again, this could be within you, a mindset, a spiritual aspect to yourself, or an energy imbalance, or it could be your physical space that is influencing you to have that heaviness or experience feeling stuck. We also can see sleep disturbances. So this could be not falling asleep, not staying asleep, being woken up, sleeping too long, or not being able to wake up in the morning. That can also be a sign. Having your immune system be affected. So if you're tending to get sick more often, and again, there's more practical physical aspects to this as well. So I'm going to cover the ones that are more energetic imbalances that can affect our immune system. Again, we think about mold, we think about our diet, we think about stress, all those things that do affect our immune system. But if for the most part you're taking care of yourself and you don't have environmental factors that are affecting your physical immune system function, we could look at an energetic imbalance that's affecting it. So getting sick often or having more allergies than normal. That can be an effect of your immune system just being potentially influenced by an energetic stagnancy or energetic imbalance. If you have emotional imbalance or common emotional upheaval that's happening in your space, so this could be within yourself or with other people around you, again, disclaimer here, I'm not a mental health professional, and it's always important to reach out to those professionals, especially if you don't feel safe or if you feel like you're going to harm yourself or others, or if other people in your space are in that mindset. It's important to, of course, reach out for people in that particular circumstance. But sometimes we can just have this emotional, instability. It's not something that's crazy or affecting our lives in a huge way, but we just feel like we're fluctuating a little bit more than normal to, just feeling a little bit frustrated or feeling a little bit sad or feeling a little bit of a different emotion. And it doesn't seem like it's ever a baseline contentment or a baseline of happiness or joy. And of course, that's something that we want to look at, what's going on in the energy within yourself and within your space. When we are going through, or people around us in our space are going through big changes include losing a loved one, changing your sense of who you are, like you graduated high school and now you're a young adult, or if you are changing jobs, changing relationship, going through a divorce. If you are a mother and you are an empty nester and now your children have left a home, any challenges regarding change, letting go, that can be very challenging and affect us emotionally and energetically. And we put that energy into our space. So those are signs we could use in energy clearing. And then in general, physical cleaning. So this is it goes in hand. The energetic space in which you're in is going to be reflected of what the physical space looks like. So if there's dust, if there's dirt, if it's dirty windows and, there's dishes with dirt and all that stuff all over your space, that's going to influence us psychologically, affect our mood, and affect our energy. So this is why spring cleaning physically is actually really awesome to do, especially at this time. Now, you guys have experienced that before, right? You've cleaned up your room or decluttered or tidied or gone through old items that you no longer needed and donated them, or you just cleaned out a junk drawer. So that experience is an act of using your physical body, your physical vessel, to remove items, dirt, or tidying up anything in general, just moving objects around or getting rid of them, and this affecting you psychologically. So we've all experienced this. And a lot of times you experience feeling lighter, feeling better after you remove objects you no longer need, feeling more clean and refreshed after removing dirt. And in general, the mental clutter can even lighten up. So if you're feeling like you're thinking too much and you're overwhelmed and feeling anxious, when you clear up your space of even debris or even just excess items that are in one place, it can really affect you psychologically and mentally. And of course, that leads to feeling your emotional feelings as well. So when we're talking about energy in general, the energy is something that's not always there to be seen with the eye. It's something, again, that is experienced subtly. It's in the background. So for example, if you live near a busy highway or a busy street, you have background noise affecting you all the time. And if you've lived there for a while, you've acclimated to that background noise. Maybe you don't even notice it anymore. But if you have guests that come to your home or to your space, it's something that they will notice. So most of the time, the subtle energies that are around us, we've kind of acclimated to them. It's just how it is. Another example is if you have pets and you don't notice maybe a subtle pet smell to your home. And when you leave to go on vacation and you come home, you're like, oh, wow, does my house really smell like that? So sometimes it helps when we remove ourselves from the space and then come back, or have someone else completely different, like someone like myself or someone who does house clearing or even decorating or feng shui. Again, these are all intertwined here. Someone who's not acclimated to the general baseline energy to your space can really help gain some perspective and give you a sense of what really they're picking up when they're there. And that's another thing you can do. You can ask friends or family, like when you come over to my home, what do you sense? What's the essence of my space? Does it feel warm? Does it feel calm? Does it feel chaotic? Does it feel spacey, dreamy? Do you want to fall asleep when you're here? Do you want to get up and party? What are you feeling when you come into my space? So this is really important, because if you're acclimated to it and you don't have that perspective, asking someone else can really help you get an idea of what the energetic imprint or signature of your space is. Now, we did talk in the past about spirits, unwanted energies in your space, and that's a different topic. So that is a different topic entirely. But in general, I will touch on if there is something else in your space that is an energy signature, which could be a spirit or something like that, and it is unwelcome. Again, it's in the background. It's something that may not always be sensed, but it is there and it's imprinting and affecting your space. So you want to clear those things out if you need to as well. And again, we can refer you to another episode if you want to hear just on that topic. So let's talk about the factors that make up a space's personality. And this will be really interesting for you to take a mental inventory of your home, of your space, of your office, or whatever space is in question. You're thinking, hey, maybe I'm having some symptoms here. I need an energetic cleansing because, the bullet point symptoms I listed at the beginning, you're experiencing those, or someone in your home is. So these factors make up the personality and the essence of a space. And now remember, I said that if you become acclimated to your space, you may not even notice it anymore. These are types of things you can think about and say, yeah, this is something that's a factor. So one of the factors in affecting the energetic signature or personality of a space is its history. Obviously, right? If there's history in that space, not even just for yourself. So historically, maybe you've had lots of gatherings, holiday events, get-togethers with friends or family. There's a history there. And that affects us psychologically, the memories and the associative memory to that space. So that obviously affects us. But then there's also the history energetically. Who lived in that house before you? What was their life like? Did they have a life that was happy, sad? Was there poverty involved? Was there death? Was there anything with relation to anger or sadness or even substance abuse, addiction, or mental health? So most of the time when we do house clearings, there is spirits or energies that have been in the space historically, and usually a strong energy imprint of anger, frustration, disillusionment, or something that there is just a strong imprint of emotional imbalance that spirit's still there hanging out. And again, you can have happy spirits that are there to support and uplift, and they're not usually ones that people want to get rid of. But in general, the history of who's been there, and especially if there are spirits still in your property or in your home, I should say, that can affect things too. But think about the history of your property and your home, even before your home was built. So what's the history of the land? Who lived on the land before you? Talking about a lot of native cultures, a lot of Native Americans that traditionally are in the spaces in this country at least. So thinking about where the lineage of people that lived on the land, what were they doing? Were they farming the land? Was there manufacturing? Was it a interim area? So for example, the property in which Firefly Hollow is located on, this was an area where Native Americans would travel and be more transitory through because there's a spring here. So there was a lot of stopping, camping out, and then picking up and going. So it's interesting because that's always been the history and the energy of this house. We've always had people coming and going in this house ever since my great-grandmother lived here. Again, this is a property that's been in our family for 6 generations, and so that influences it too. We were farmers, so we're always working. The people who live here are always working. I'm always working. It's part of my lineage. And then we're always there to help and nurture other people. And there's always a desire to give and to bring sustenance to the community and to the energies of people that come here. And it's just interesting because the Native Americans that we're traveling through, they stopped, they got sustenance from the spring that is here, the life force that pushes itself up through the ground here and brings us that life, that water that grows all the plants and nurtures all of us. And that's still the energetic signature of this space. That's still the theme that is what is still happening here in the clinic as well as in the physical home. There was always people coming and going in this house, anyone that needed a place to stay. That was kind of how it was. So think about the history beyond when your house was built as well. What was the land used for? Those are important things to think about. And then let's talk about the energy input. What's happening currently? These are the factors that also affect a space's personality. So on a general day-to-day basis, are you feeling exhausted? Are you happy? Are you stressed? Are you tired? Are you feeling goofy? Are you feeling irresponsible? Are you feeling trapped? What do you normally feel in your space? And you can think about those around you as well. And we also know that the factors of work and the different spaces in which we are in throughout the day, if we're not home all the time, those also influence us, and we bring those home to our physical space. So I'll talk about what I like to do in general to clear that stuff that's, things that's not from our physical space in which we're living, because we're kind of like picking up dirt and on our shoes and then tracking it around throughout different spaces. And that really sometimes what happens. But think about the energy input. What energy is being input into your home? The people that live there and yourself. What emotional energy is generally the vibe of your space? Because that also will affect the space. And again, we're going to talk later about if you get an idea as you're taking a mental inventory here of what's influencing your space, what general emotions, what general personality it's going to have, we'll be able to use the elemental tools later to kind of find balance with what's going on here. So we'll talk about chi flow here next. So when it comes to a personality of a person, right? How someone dresses, right? How they wear their clothing, how they groom themselves, that affects their personality and the expression of who they are, right? Your space is no different in how it's dressed, how it's decorated, right? How the furniture is laid out, that creates movement or stagnation. So you have a particular table or a chair or something that's maybe too big or too small. It creates maybe a issue with walking or moving around the space. Or when you come into a room and you look, there's just probably something odd around how the flow of the house is set up, or the home or the space, meaning you have doors, strange places, or maybe there is a space or a room that feels very dark or stagnant. Again, you can think about that closet or that room that you have all your clutter in, right? Some people, we have these rooms and maybe there's no windows, or maybe there are windows, but we have blinds, closing the light off from that room. And that is a room that would be stagnant. It's a room that if you walk into it, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of life in there. It's a room that's full of clutter. So thinking about the flow of energy, or the chi flow, the flow throughout your house. And that's affected by how your house is dressed, how your house is decorated, and how it's cleaned up. Just like how we express ourselves. How are we expressing our outfit? How are we maintaining our day-to-day grooming? That kind of thing. So that's the flow of a space. Windows, water, mirrors, light, anything that creates the flow or more chi flow within a space will also affect the energy and the personality of a space. Have you ever walked into someone's home where they have a really, really big, maybe a foyer, or they have a really big space that has little furniture, and maybe it's really echoey, it feels maybe empty, or it feels really expansive? Depending on the type of material the flooring is made out of, depending on, again, how big it is and what other objects are in the room, that can change the personality of the space a lot. And if it's a really big open room with no carpet, maybe it has tile floors, maybe a lot of bright white color, maybe there's not a lot of decorations on the walls, that is going to make that room feel kind of empty, but big and echoey, and maybe it has an echo when you're talking to it. So it feels open, it feels big, and that can affect the space. It's not necessarily going to feel like a place you want to go sit down and cozy up. That's not a cozy space, a warm space. It's an open space that might feel more cold, but not feel like a place you want to curl up and cuddle up with a book next to your friend. So that affects the personality of the space. So let's talk briefly about how this example of the space could affect us on an energetic level. Now, if we have a space that's very echoey, very open, feeling cold, over time, if that space is not cared for, taken care of as far as balancing. We could experience feeling maybe cold, like literally. Maybe our energy could feel that it's a little bit lonely. Maybe we could potentially see that there is a lot of overactivity in the room. And again, this depends on the factors of that space and the details, because if there's a lot of chi flow, echoing, you have walls and stone tile floor where there's a lot of movement, it creates, remember, echo is just basically a sound reflection off of a surface. So if you're having that, you're having a lot of chi, a lot of energy, a lot of sound waves bouncing around in that space. And that could potentially make you feel spacey. And if you're someone that's been trying to get a project done, or if you have this thing where you just keep getting distracted and you feel like you're not accomplishing your goals or something you want to accomplish, it could be that you're overwhelmed, overstimulated, or on some energetic level, that room or that space is creating a distraction. Again, if it is an excess of chi flow, there's too much air element in there. We'll talk about the elements later. And things are just moving around a lot. It may be an area where you can't calm down. And then maybe if that is your bedroom, you may not sleep as well. If it's a study, you may not learn or acclimate to any information that you're supposed to absorb as well. You might get distracted, get ADHD symptoms, and just go, wait, over here, what's that? So that is an example here of how a space can start to affect our energy and then us emotionally. And of course, eventually we can get affected physically, as a lot of scatteredness can lead to anxiety if we're not getting something done and we feel that we're not accomplishing something. That can build up. And then anxiety, as you're well aware, can start affecting the physical body, chest palpitations, heart racing, feeling tight, feeling tense. So see how this kind of trickles down. And this is just one example for you. With windows, water, mirrors, light, we're going to talk about each of those individually. Again, windows bring in more light. So if you have more windows, a lot of times you have more chi flow. Maybe you have windows in a space you don't want them and people can look in. But windows and light in general create a space of feeling of movement and a feeling that there's energy happening here. Very many the spaces you've ever been in, if you've been in a warehouse or a place that has no windows, poor or artificial lighting, that's not some space that's really cozy to be in. It might feel like a space that you want to just get out of. So again, that will affect the personality. And for when we're doing house clearings in the past, when I was working with those people, most of the time, a lot of the tools that we need to use is really creating an area where there's no stagnation. And most of the time, stagnation happens where there's no windows, there's no light, and there's no flow of chi happening. I always say to people, energy that's dead energy doesn't move. That's why we don't like it. That's why it feels creepy. So when you run into an animal alongside the road, or maybe when you're hiking on a trail and it has passed away, there's a stagnancy to that energy of that leftover animal carcass because it's not alive. And as human beings, it doesn't something that we want to move towards. It's something that we're trying to move away from. Most of our lives, we're trying to move away from death, even though it's imminent, but that's not something we move towards. So anything that's stagnant, even water, stagnant water in a place in nature is not safe because there could be bacteria in there. So we have learned to move away from stagnancy. Stagnancy is not safe for our survival. So any places in anywhere that feel dark, that feel stagnant, there's no movement, there's no light, those spaces don't feel peaceful. They don't feel like we want to hang out there. Unless you're like so overstimulated and you need to go into your closet because you've had such an overstimulating day, you want to get away from all the noises, your children, and just be in the dark, corner or dark closet. That makes sense for us. Limited amount of time. But when we are working with energy and the flow in general of our space and the personality that our space has, in general, we don't really want a space that represents death or stagnation, because that will reflect in our lives, in our physical, emotional life, our relationships, our work life. Stagnancy, the energy of stagnancy will reflect over into it. And so as I'm continuing to go through these factors that affect the space's personality, again, as you're kind of making your mental inventory of your space, look at the themes and how they might also be showing up in your health, in your relationships, in your job, in your finances, in your relationship with your family. Those things really are interesting to note if there's a correlation between the environment, the history, the energy input, like what energy normally is being put into your home, whether it's by you or people around you, and if there's movement or stagnation based on chi flow, based on windows, water, mirrors, light. So we talked about light and windows. Water is an element that can bring in movement. So this is if you have a space that doesn't have windows, and maybe you have some light in there and lamps, but there's no windows. A nice way to create movement is having a little water fountain or a fish tank or something like that. And that creates movement because we hear the water. Water is not sitting stagnant like in a puddle in the middle of the forest where we shouldn't be drinking out of it. It's moving. It's creating a movement of energy. And in general, when we have running water, a lot of times that does put off negatively charged ions that affect the air quality and affect the molecules in the air and charge them. So it's healthier for us. Negative ions are really good for us. A lot of times we're surrounded by too many positively charged ions with a lot of the electromagnetic pollution and things that we have in our life right now. But I think that it's in general, water is an element that can be involved in our world, in our homes, in our office space to create movement. And mirrors is another one as well. Mirrors also create a sense of movement. If you have a room that has a blank wall and maybe no windows, but you put a very large mirror up there, that room is going to feel not only bigger, but it's going to feel like there's more movement involved in there than it would without the mirror. And then also plants. So plants also can absolutely affect the space and the energy signature of the space. Have you ever been in someone's house who has a lot of plants? And I mean plants that are well kept. They're not dying, right? They're plants that are just lush and vibrant. It feels so different. The vitality and the energy signature of that space definitely has an influence on you if you're very sensitive specifically to energy. So plants are a really big factor in your space's personality. And also, if you're someone that loves plants, right, each plant has a personality. I know my friends who are big plant lovers, if you guys are out there animal lovers and you have pets and they're just, they're my extended family, they have personalities. Well, if you're not a plant lover yet, you're not really into plants. It's the same thing with plants. Like you have friends and family that love plants, they feel the same way about their plants as you could be feeling about your animals and your pets. So just to kind of make that connection for those of you who aren't plant people, it's totally the same thing. They're putting energetic signatures, personalities into your space. Just like your cat or your dog or any pets you have are also influencing your personality of your space. So the next thing on the list that influence the energy of a space are anything that affects the flow of electromagnetics. So we're thinking power lines. If you live, there are a lot of power lines, power plants. If you have a lot of electromagnetic activity in your home, because maybe you have a lot of televisions or Alexas or Wi-Fi or anything that's putting out electromagnetic energy. Maybe you have a lot of smart devices around. You could also have a smart meter. That's the way that your electrical company is getting their information for how much electricity you're using. If you have any maybe metal, copper pipes in your house, maybe it's an older house. So anything like metal or copper or even gemstones or crystals that are piezoelectric in nature, they are affecting or can potentially affect the flow of electromagnetic energy. So think about your friends or family members that have a lot of maybe crystals or anything like that in their home. I know some of our listeners are big crystal fanatics. They love crystals, and that can really affect the energetics of your home or your space. And think about it like this. If you've ever been into a crystal shop, people who go to those spaces or go into maybe these big gem mining shows, the energy there feels really different because crystals have a specific molecular structure that are absolutely piezoelectric, meaning when you tap on it, it can actually hold an electrical charge. That's why we use crystals, specifically quartz crystals are common to be used in watches and some of our electronic devices because they are a good conductor of electromagnetic energy. So anything like that that's in your home, whether it's something that's life-giving, like a crystal or maybe plants as well, because plants also influence that, water, that's great, but some of these are life-draining forces like these power lines or anything that's related to putting off positively charged ions like Wi-Fi or any of that. Your smart meters, those things can negatively affect or influence the energies of your space. But you can also think about other things that are how your flooring or your home is made, the materials. So stone flooring versus cork or wood flooring. Just think about how that feels walking into a space that has a stone floor versus a wooden floor. There's a difference to it. There's a different feel to it, and it's going to conduct electromagnetic energy through the house in a different way. I've been a really cool cob house, that maybe versus a brick house or a log cabin. Again, what the materials are going to affect the energy signature and the personality of the space. And then the last two things that really affect the space, these are, again, there are more than this, but these are just the ones I'm going to talk about today, are anything that's under construction. Anything that is maybe cluttered or maybe it was naturally damaged by some sort of wind, hail, fire, anything like that. Obviously, if those things are happening in your space or are currently happening or have happened in the past, those also are going to affect the personality of your space. And the last one is one that we don't often think about, are any natural environmental surroundings, things like ley lines, fault lines, springs. I talked about springs earlier. We have a spring on our property. If you live near a volcano, if there's volcanic activity near you, there's going to be a lot more electromagnetic energy just around you in the land and the space, and that affects things tremendously. If you've ever been to a tropical island where there is volcanic activity, that can really influence the space. Hawaii has that, and it's amazingly incredible, the way that the energy feels there. And I think that along with the culture and some other things that affects that, the energy of that space, of that land. So I'm really sensitive to those things, and I think that we don't always think about what the space has as far as mineral content as well. Like if you go down to Arkansas, there's a lot of quartz crystal beds, and that area or any area where there's mining or any particular type of mineral in the soil that's electromagnetic and conductive in nature, that can be affecting the energy personality of the home or the building or structure that's built on top of that. So just thinking about that, I think that's a really good general idea of what is the energy of your space, right? What's the environment? What were the ley lines? Anything that you know that's around it? What was the history? What about your energetic input? Are you putting out a space of peace? Are you putting out a space of stress into your home or space on the daily? How about the chi flow? Is there movement or stagnation based on windows or mirrors or light? Is there a good flow with the furniture or the items you have in that space? And then about the electromagnetics, what do you have as far as things that are affecting that as well? And any space construction or clutter or anything that had happened to the space recently. So those are the things you want to think about in your space. And I think the number one thing that we really do focus on is the daily energy input, because that's the thing that's constantly charging our space. Yes, there's a history of your home or your office or whatever space you're talking about. Yes, there is materials that are in the space that are affecting things, but what is the constant life force, the thing that's alive, that's charging your space with a specific energetic frequency on a routine basis? You're the thing that's alive. You're the thing that's moving. You're the thing that is on energy output. You're the thing that is on energy output, putting emotions, thoughts, movement into your daily space, or lack of movement. Maybe you're sitting and you're stagnant. But in general, I really just like the fact that we influence our environment. We influence our space. We have the power of our free will, the power of choice to shift and change our space. And sometimes it's more complex and dynamic, especially with we're living with other people, where we have to have our boundaries set and enforced, or we have to learn how to navigate communication in ways that can create the energy and the atmosphere and the environment that we're looking to experience, one of harmony and peace. And that makes it more dynamic and more challenging, but that's life's journey, isn't it? It's not a journey without some challenges. So that's really what the understanding in general of ourselves and how we can influence our space is really important here. So let's talk about some basic clearing tools. So if you're experiencing heaviness, feeling stuck, maybe ruminating in emotions, sleep disturbances, your immune system's being affected, or you're going through big changes, or anyone in your life as well is going through big changes. Again, these are signs that you could need some energy clearing in your space. But in general, anytime your space doesn't feel harmonious, doesn't feel like a space that is one that you want to be in, one that makes you feel content in what the purpose of that space is. Again, each room could also be different in your home. You may have a space where you want to relax, a space where you want to be uplifted, a space where you want to be active and motivated, a space where you want to be creative, a space where you want to gather with other people. That's why different areas of the home feel different. But in general, you'll have an energetic signature to the entire space. So what is the purpose of your space? What do you need it to be? What do you want it to be? And if it's not that, that's a sign that it's imbalanced, especially if it's not making you feel or experience the experience that you're looking to have in that space. So in general, basic clearing tools that people are very familiar with, I'm just going to go over them very simply. It's tools that are utilizing a physical process, some sort of ritual or movement or ceremonial process that has a psychological or spiritual effect. So I'll say that again. Any tools that you're using that is a physical process or a physical ritual or ceremony, a physical process that reflects and has a psychological spiritual effect. So this is where when we're using some sort of tool, it's affecting the space on a mental, emotional, spiritual, and psychological level. So traditionally, there's so many tools. There's not one that's better than the other. I think in general, we sometimes can find out that there's a tool that our family always used to, clear something spiritually, or some sort of thing that we could say is superstition, or just a thing that's been passed down in our lives that we use to clear a mental negative thought. Or when someone was fighting in the house, maybe people would have a ritual of laughing or doing something to clear and move the energy. So there are many different cultures and traditions, and I find it really important for you to research and look into all the different types of traditions and cultures and what they used each tool for. Because sage and using sage and smudge is very common. It's a fantastic tool that we often recommend for people, but at this time, I just feel it's important for us to take a moment to recognize that it's not something that's generally a part of our heritage unless you're Native American or you're from some sort of tribal traditional culture that uses herbs and sacred plants of some sort to clear a space spiritually. So I'm just going to take a moment to honor that tool that's not mine, not from my heritage, and just honor that in a way that really respects it. I think it's important for us to learn about some of these rituals and some of the things that have become trending and understand that maybe these tools have been stolen from a culture that's not ours. And I think in general, I'm all for bringing any tool to anyone that is helping them live a better life, that will help them bring in more joy and happiness and treat each other with more love and respect. And if we can do that, if you're finding a fish from the ocean and waving it around your house, even though it stinks to high heaven, is creating a space of joy and happiness for you, even if it's taken from another culture, if you've respected that culture, honored it, given respect to that culture for allowing you to take that fish waving clearing process, which maybe there is a process like that out there, guys. I'm not aware of that, but if there is, I just think it's important to honor the culture in which it came from. Because I think too often we, especially in the spiritual community, there are taking different traditions from lineages and spiritual tribal cultures that they're westernizing things. And I think that we want to try to respect where things have come from. So that's just my take on that. So sage and smudge are really commonly used to clear a space. I'm not going to again go into how we do this. We're just going to general talk about the tools that are used. You can look at another episode we have on clearing your energetic space. Prayer is also common. Prayer is the greatest way because honestly, all of these tools in general are just a representation of your mindset and what you're putting out there in your mind or with your request or with your intention or your will. So prayer is absolutely combining your will with the divine of whatever divine you connect with, and you're connecting to in a space of faith and trust and saying, hey, I need this. Let's have this. I believe, I trust, here it is. And so it is. So that's something that I think is really great because we can utilize the power of our spirituality and our divine connection to clear something out in a space that doesn't feel right. Like if it feels too chaotic or feels too stagnant, ask for what you need. Ask for that and intend that and put that into the space. We can do this through chanting, through prayer, through speaking out loud, through singing. I also like to incorporate sound. So anytime there's stagnancy in a space, you can utilize tools such as sound, music, anything in general. Some people like to use rattles, drums, singing bowls, or just put on your favorite Billy Joel song. Whatever it is you love, that energetically charges a space. So we talked a little bit about this in a past episode. So again, I'm not going to dive deeper into that. But you can also use Reiki, any physical cleaning. Again, cleaning with any of your cleaning supplies that can help clear out dust, dirt, and any grime or anything that's creating a space of just ickiness in your home. And I like a sweeping sensation. So if you're sweeping with a broom, as you're sweeping out physical dirt, you can utilize that same sweeping motion as a physical representation of this mental process of sweeping out negative energy or sweeping out energy that doesn't serve you. Visualization really goes hand in hand with that. So basic tools, any sort of clearing herb of any sort, anything that you can burn, incense, smudge, anything that you burn that represents something to you, a candle, those things are clearing in general. We're using fire to clear. We're using our word, we're using sound, we're using chanting, music, prayer, anything that's using the power of vibration to change and shift the energy in a space. And then, of course, prayer, Reiki, anything that's utilizing energetic frequencies, such as crystals as well, to move the energy on a vibrational level. And then we got the physical cleaning as last. So make sure that you don't skip that. Don't do all the energy clearing and you still have a dirty house. It's not going to work that way. So let's talk about the elements in a space. This is another way you can also determine where there's imbalances in your space. And we're going to talk about the 4 elements: fire, air, water, and earth, and what they represent within ourselves, but also within our space. So as I go over these, I want you to think about your own energy, your own space, and the personality of your space, and how these also relate potentially to your space. So the element of fire is that motivation, that drive, that passion that we carry within ourselves. So a home can feel motivating. It can feel warm. It can feel like it's a space where you want to do things or get things done. So that could be a really good balanced use of the fire element. Now, if there is no passion, there's no drive, there's no connection, maybe no physical intimacy as well, maybe a passion in that physical sense, a sensual sense, or just intimacy with maybe a platonic way with your family or with your children, just this connection, a connection that creates passion, that creates love. If that's not there, that can be an imbalance in fire. If we're experiencing too much frustration or anger or resentment or things like that, or we're lacking passion or drive, that could be absolutely just an imbalance in the fire element. In general, in the physical space, you can feel a coldness, like again, lack of warmth, lack of fire, things feeling cold and things just feeling stagnant. So the next element we're talking about is air. Air inspires us. It gives us the aspect to understand information, education, study, and learning. It's also our spiritual connection. There's a reason why air, feathers, birds, the sky are all associated with spirit. So this aspect is a lot of movement, air, wind, this is movement. So an area that's stagnant maybe doesn't have a lot of movement. Maybe there's not a lot of air flow in a space. So we need to open a window, or we need to move the air and put a fan on. But in general, if there is blocked communication in your space, maybe, or excessive communication devices. This is more common. So television, any of our smartphones, smart devices, anything that gives us information, because information is air element. We have a lot of information. We have information overload. A lot of times we have too much air, and that creates anxiousness. It creates feeling spacey, overthinking, overanalyzing, lacking the ability to focus, and also feeling spiritually disconnected, especially if we have overload on the analytical, logical topics and subjects. Maybe we have a lot of books or a lot of movies or any sort of media. This is an over-excessive expression of the air element being information and communication. And what is media in general? Most everything we watch on TV and all the movies and all the things on our phones, our podcasts, that's all information. So if we have too much of that, that can create feelings of anxiety and experiencing just overthinking and not being able to focus. Hello, ADHD, and that spaciness feeling. And I think in general, the worst part I don't like to see is when people feel disconnected from the stillness, the quality of air that is the inspiration, the breath of air from spirit that says, hey, I have a guide for you. I got a little spiritual breadcrumb for you. Here's a little bit of information. And then the stillness to actually hear that information, hear your guidance, hear your gut. That's the air element. That's it. It's in balance when you can hear what information you're getting or in spiritual insights that you can connect with. So if you have those things that you're experiencing in your space, that could be the air element being imbalanced. Now the water element, that is the nurture space. So that's where you feel safe to express emotionally and to connect to your intuition, safe to feeling, to go into deep stages of sleep and to dream. So if you're empathetic and you're empathic, if you're feeling sad or you're feeling out of balance or out of touch with your emotions, this can all represent the water element. So remember, the water element is emotions in general, dreams, intuition. So if you're feeling like your life is dreamy or surreal, that can be an expression of overactive water element in your space. So that's something to look out for and just to connect with if you feel that. And we'll talk about some tools what you can use to work with the water element. And then the final one, earth, is feelings of stability, security, and groundedness. So in your space, do you feel stable? Do you feel secure? Is there a steady rhythm and pace for doing the chores and getting things done? And that routine, that rhythm, that's steady, that's grounded. But if there's too much of that and there's too much stagnancy in the routine, it can be rigid or too structured, and that can lead to depression. If there's not a lot of movement, everything's too stagnant, right? Depression, low energy, feeling stuck. Or it could be there is just feelings of instability. That lack of security, groundedness, stability is not in the space, so the earth element needs supported. So earth, air, fire, and water, each of these elements represent something in your space, also within yourself, but in your space. So we're looking at, what does our space speak to us? What is the personality of our space? So if you've kind of taken a mental inventory of your space now, we're going to go and talk about the basics of using elements. Again, this is just the basics. So you have a little bit of an idea of what you can do with the space that you have and how can you use these tools to have a little bit of a spring cleaning event, a psychic, energetic spring cleaning event for your home or your office. So if you're having imbalances in the fire element, think items that relate to fire. Think candles, right? Candles are always romantic and create connection, right? We connect around a fire. Tribally, we've always connected in that space. Or a romantic dinner, there's candles. So that's that passion. That's that fire element. You can activate that. I utilize candles in my own life when the energy feels stagnant, when it's cold outside, when it's dark. When you come into someone's home or office, when they have a candle lit on a cold, wet, rainy day, it feels warm. It inspires connection, it inspires that heat. So that's a way you can utilize that in a very simple way. Warm colors like red or orange, maybe spicy scents that get you motivated. But again, anything that makes you feel connection, passion, motivation, and drive. Those are items you want to put in that space. Thinking items, you could think about pictures of people who inspire you or make you feel motivated, that you want to get up every day and do whatever it is you're doing. So those are the fire element things. And using those, basically you're using any item you have to stimulate passion and motivation. Next one is air. So when you want to stimulate that aspect of spirit, connecting to that higher power, but also connecting to learning, academia, logic, any sort of information input that you want to have. Input is air. So the air element is information and communication. So the use of smoke and incense is a nice way to do that. Spiritual iconography, so anything that you have around your home that you want to have a picture or someone that is your guide, your saint, your angels, whatever that is, could be a loved one. Those things can also help you feel connected to spirit. Let's talk about any media. So if you have books, if you have movies, those things just need to be organized. So you want to make sure that the air element is organized in a nice fashion that's not causing too much chaos. So if you are a fan of collecting books, records, anything that is information or media, you want to make sure that it's organized. That's a way you can balance the air element in your life. If you don't have enough air, Think about an air purifier, something simple that is a physical reflection of that, like a fan as well, that helps to bring that air element into your space, or something as simple as opening a window. We can utilize essential oils such as rosemary or eucalyptus, peppermint. Those oils stimulate the lungs, stimulate breath, stimulate that element and essence of air. And then you can utilize any colors that you associate with the element of air. Some people might associate air with a different color, so it's really up to what you associate with air. The next one is water. Ways that we can utilize water to create a nurturing space where we can feel connected to our dreams, our intuition, emotionally, empathetically to ourselves or to our space. We can utilize water fountains, fish tanks, maybe just a bowl of water with maybe some crystals in it or some herbs, something that really helps us connect again to that water element. Could be drinking a cup of tea on the regular basis, having pictures of water, or maybe pictures that are more surreal or dreamy like. And I think that this is really good for people who are very logical and not very emotional in their nature. They tend to be more analytical. You want to balance yourself out and your space out by allowing some dreamy, artistic, maybe surreally type of art and color in your life that can help balance you and your space. Any colors that you feel are associated with water, and also any reflective surfaces like mirrors or glass. So glass is reflective. Again, water is reflective. That's why it's interesting that it's connected with emotions. That's why I find it interesting that when we have healing, we go to the places like the lake, the ocean, places where there are water. Water gives us life. It gives us the sustenance, and it also gives us a space to reflect and go inward so that we can release any emotions or balance any emotions needed. So again, if your space is out of balance in the emotional aspect, if there's too much or there's not enough emotional expression, you want to look at that water element. And then the last one is earth. Well, plants, they're the best things, I think, to actually put in your space for more earth, for more groundedness and stability and security and some rhythm if you don't have enough of that. Because if you have plants in there, you're going to have to keep them alive. And in order to keep them alive, you're going to have to get yourself on a schedule and a routine that you're consistently watering them. And consistency is key in creating security and groundedness. So they're really kind of nice little partners to bring along as your sidekicks in learning how to create a grounded and secure space in your home, especially if you have a lot of chaos going on. Having more consistent structure and items that represent the element of earth, like stones or rocks, wood, earth colors, or even just photos of nature can be very helpful for earth element. So in general today, I hope you learned a little bit more about what the energy signature or the personality of your space looks like, and noticing what particular elements in your space may be out of balance, and some simple basic tools that you can utilize to bring your elements in your space back into balance. And again, when doing this psychic energetic spring cleaning and evaluating your space, you don't have to always do it in the spring. But it's a good time to do it after the dead of winter. We're coming out. We're now ready to plant seeds for our year, to plant seeds for what we're looking to create. And if we're going to create peace and balance, we need to have it in our spaces. So thank you guys so much again for listening, and be well until next time, my friends. Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Detox podcast. We wish you wellness and health in your mind, body, and spirit. And be well until next time, my friends.